ride with me to the other clans and we will defeat the sky people.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello out there in podcast and YouTube land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and those key elements that lift them above the average genre fare. Are you new to us? If you are, we would like to welcome you to our strange brand of nerdy criticism, I guess you would call it.
Nerdicism.
Yeah, this is our first show, actually, of this. I would call it the second half of our fifth season, even though we're just about 17 episodes in. We're almost halfway. And if you are coming back, you know that already. So, but I am here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. David Horton. David, how are you doing?
I am good. I'm excited. It's 2023. What could possibly happen? We'll see what this year brings to us, but it will bring us more Johnny Has the Keys, so that's always good. Usually we start by talking about our genre week. I haven't really done anything new or different genre week this week because I've been working, so I've had a lot of stuff to do and everything else. But part of that work kind of fits into genre week because at the Capitol where I work, we showed Frankenstein. The 31 classic, it's Boris and everything up on the big screen. And it was so great to see it huge and to see a bunch of audience members there. Appreciate it. It was really good. It was a good house, a good, and so neat. I mean, we covered it. Did we cover that this year? We've covered that movie.
Frankenstein was first season.
First
season.
Sure. Yeah, I think it was first season.
I would revisit it.
Oh, yeah. I think we should. It was just, man, seeing those sets up almost like, full scale on the big screen, all those sets, Wales direction, of course. I like 10 minutes into it, I was going, man, why didn't he do more movies? I just love his style. Even the graveyard scene, the hunt scene at the end, when you can actually see the backdrop wriggle when they run the
cinematography is great.
It's just brilliant.
Yeah. I got a question though. I'm assuming, even though it was a re-release to theaters, that it was restored?
Yeah, this was a restoration, but restored in black and white, of course. But
and the scenes were in it because at one time the scene of him throwing the girl in the water was taken out.
Yeah, no, it's in it.
Okay,
yeah, it's as it should be. I mean, that's kind of the whole point. You don't want that to be implied, kind of thing. Although, I think we talked about it when we covered it. If you do see the edited version, it does have the same punch, just because he has the father carrying her body into town. So dramatic kind of thing. So both work, but I think the confusion you see on the monster after it is important. And we didn't, you don't get that if they cut the scene. Yeah. So yeah. So that was my genre week. I revisited classic Mary Shelley Frankenstein.
That's amazing. I love that movie. Now you got me wanting to watch it.
Yeah.
Well, in my genre week this week, I went, of course, to Shudder, as I normally do.
What?
And I saw
shocking.
It's very shocking. I saw a film, another one that you're probably not going to want to see anytime soon, because it's great, but it's a foreign film, and I know you're not a fan because it's got subtitles. I watched a movie called Tigers Are Not Afraid.
Okay.
So we're going back to those long titles that you always question.
Right. The girl and the vampire on the street at night, or whatever. Yeah.
A girl walks home alone at night.
Yeah, there you go.
This one, however, is not Iranian. This one is Mexican.
Okay.
And it was filmed in 2017. It was written and directed by a woman named Isa Lopez. She has nothing of note, of course, to us because predominantly her stuff is Mexican, or actually, I think it's all Mexican. And but I will say this movie is awesome. I loved it. One of the critics or one of the reviews I read said it's Pan's Labyrinth meets City of God. And I thought, you know what? The Pan's Labyrinth is on the nose. I said, this movie, yeah, this movie plays exactly like a Guillermo del Toro movie on a low budget.
Well, maybe she was inspired by Guillermo.
I think so. And I have a feeling, I don't know this for a fact. I didn't find any information, but I wonder if he is like a sponsor of hers.
Maybe.
Because
Patron.
if not, he may be now because he rated it number 8 of his top 10 films of 2017.
Wow.
So he saw it and he loved it. It's basically one of those stories that crosses over with real terror and supernatural terror in the setting. So much like Pan's Labyrinth, where you have a child and a fantasy world in the Spanish Civil War, this is children that are orphaned in Mexico City because of a drug cartel.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And they live on the streets, but there is a supernatural element as well involving people that died from their families.
Demons.
Ghost. Yeah, Ghost. Exactly. A real quick synopsis. Estrella is 10 years old and has 3 wishes. The first one, that her missing mother comes back. Well, it happens. She returns, but she's dead, and she follows her everywhere. So she's scared. She tries to escape by joining a gang of other orphans, orphaned from the cartel. Soon she realizes that the dead are never left behind. And when you're in the middle of brutality and violence, wishes never come true the way you want them to. So
it's Pet Cemetery.
A little bit. It's really good. I highly recommend it if you don't mind watching subtitles. It's moody and atmospheric. Parts of it reminded me a little bit of Nightmare on Elm Street because there's always like a you know what? I did not put my background up. Here's a shot right here. See that woman in the like body bag? That kind of reminds me a bit of Nightmare on Elm Street. And also I mentioned that it was endorsed by Guillermo del Toro. It is also endorsed by Stephen King, who said this is a terrific film, both tough and touching. He said he watched 2 minutes of it and was under its spell immediately. And I was the same way.
Wow. So, high praise. Good. That's good.
High praise. So you guys out there that have Shudder, I highly recommend this one for your next viewing.
Yes, it's frightening. And tigers are not afraid, though.
No, tigers are not afraid. And neither are these little kids, man. They're tough. It's like King said. Yeah.
That's neat. Well, I mean, tough is an okay segue because we're talking about somebody who's tough. Actually, the tagline for today's movie is "You will believe a man can fly." So we are doing 1978's Richard Donner classic film. I guess you would call it somewhat classic, Superman, based on, of course, the comic, I guess we should say. By the same thing. The description that they put on IMDb, I wanted to do because I love it, because it's an alien orphan is sent from his dying planet to Earth, where he grows up to become his adoptive home's first and greatest superhero. I went, that could be anybody. That is nothing specific to Superman.
Actually, it is true, though. That is not a lie.
It's so well done, but without mentioning anything, without mentioning, how does Brando pronounce it? Krypton. Just some of the credits we talked, I mentioned it is directed by Richard Donner. It has a slew of writers. It has Jerry Siegel, Joe Shuster,
Mario Puzo
for the story credit. He gets story credit. But David Newman, his wife Leslie Newman, Robert Benton, all of them. However, Richard Donner has said that this shooting script was written by Tom Mankiewicz, which makes sense because, and I'd never thought of this before, because Tom Mankiewicz wrote a bunch of Bond movies.
He also, I think, is the go-to for Donner for finals on a lot of films like Lethal Weapon.
He does a lot of he does a lot of tweaks and everything else. Yeah, Donner came from, went on to do Lethal Weapon and several others, and Goonies, one of my son's favorite movies, The Omen that we've covered already.
Right.
Of course, Lady Hawk, which we need to cover because it's really good.
I've got that in my notes. That's hilarious.
But I guess I want to start by saying I remember this movie much more fondly than I think it really is when I watched it
that
this
is
time.
very funny because I have a similar but different reaction.
Okay.
First of all, the first time I saw this movie, I remember distinctly. My parents had taken me out of school in January to go to Disney World in 1979.
That's when the curse started. That's when the addiction started.
We actually went opening year in 71.
Oh my God.
But in 79, we went back because Space Mountain was open. And we, I guess, had time one night to go out, and we went and saw this at a theater in Orlando. And I really, really wanted to see it. My parents did not, and they were bored, and they said it's too long and it's boring. And I was like, no, it's Superman.
It's Superman. Yeah.
But watching it now, it's kind of boring.
Yeah. I had so many mixed things when I rewatched this because I literally have probably not seen it in 20 years, probably easily. I remember the first time I saw it because I actually saw it in the theater. I don't think I saw it opening weekend, but I learned through the trivia here that it actually stayed in the box office in the top 10 for 13 weeks.
Yeah, that's why I saw it in January, because it was released in December. Yeah.
So, but I saw it probably in the first few weeks of release and really liked it. I love the coloring of it. I thought Christopher Reeve, who I'd never seen before in my life, was the perfect Superman. He was just perfect. And to me, it was because I didn't read comics, but it felt like a comic brought to life kind of thing to me. So this was Marvel pre-Marvel kind of
big time, very pre-Marvel. But they were doing a Spider-Man show on television at the time where he would like shoot a web and a net would drop down. I mean, it was really bad.
And a string would come out like, yeah. However, going into this, I have confused this with the sequel.
The sequel's great.
Because I love the sequel. I love Ursa. I love Zod. I like a lot of the effect work in it. And I think the story is more emotional because I always remember the ending of 2 is when he restores the Capitol. I mean, to the White House. He restores the flag to the White House and says, sorry, I was gone, Mr. President. I won't let you down again, and flies away, and then flies into the above the planet, and they do the ending again like they did in this one. But I was obviously confused because none of that is in this movie. This is it's slow. It's a little slow, yeah. It's it's slow from the beginning. The credit sequence is 5.5 minutes freaking long.
It's insanely long. And what's funny is parts of it are a little fast. Like, they don't dwell too much on his being a child with the Kents on the farm. So some of it you think, oh, it's not that slow. But what it is they needed to take some of the longer segments and shorten them somehow. Like the Fortress of Solitude stuff goes on forever, it feels like.
Yes, it does. And that's one of those time shift things, too. I do compliment Mankiewicz probably, and Puzo to an extent, I think, because it's a very, from the masculine perspective story. So it's very Puzo all the way through, even the way Olsen is played and the way Perry White is played. It's a very masculine kind of look. Even their take on Lois is kind of that Puzo-esque,
misogynist kind of, almost. Yeah. Where she's beneath him because she's female. Yeah.
But they do really cool stuff with the time jumps because, it's a baby when he puts him in the thing. It's obviously 5 or 6 little baby, when he lifts the truck. But he says it was 12 years. Then he is a teenager suddenly. Like you said, we don't spend a lot of time with baby. We suddenly are in his teen years and with Smallville. And then he finds the Fortress of Solitude, and that's years. Now he's Christopher Reeve. So that's at least, 4 or 5 years in the Fortress of Solitude.
Right.
Because you keep hearing Brando's voice say, this year we will study, blah, da, 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 and it's like, but yeah, I agree with you. It's like, could we have trimmed that just a little bit?
Probably not, because they paid Brando so much. They wanted to use every little piece of him.
Every word he said. Highest paid actor in the world at that time. At that time, he really was. His salary for this made him the highest paid actor ever.
And they could have got an unknown, done it cheaper, and it would have probably been better.
But also, Donner, for some reason, likes really slow panoramas. It's almost one of my keys is Howard Hawks, because there's a lot of that Southern Western feel to it, especially during the funeral and during the early Smallville stuff. That's just big panoramic kind of feel. And it almost, to me, another criticism, almost feels like two movies. There's everything, there's Krypton, Smallville, Fortress of Solitude, and then there's Metropolis.
Well, I mean, they were both pretty much filmed at the same time, it and the sequel. And then Donner got fired and they reshot a lot of the sequel, but he was filming two movies at once.
But it feels like it. The Metropolis scenes are suddenly, we're into James Bond territory, where we're having action piece after action piece after action piece. We've got a silly, overblown villain, and it's just, it doesn't seem like the majesty of the beginning of the movie. All of those lengthy shots showing Krypton, and we're slowly coming in,
But you've got the whole trial of the supervillains in there, which probably could have been left to the second film.
Yes, that's a good trim. You could do that. Boom. We just start with, with the council telling, Jor-El, don't do this.
Right. But it's Jor-El. It's Brando. They didn't want to cut it.
Well.
So, yeah, I mean, I see what's going on here. And now I know why this movie is long and not that great in places. I mean, I agree. The cast, Christopher Reeve in particular, and even Margot Kidder, they're great.
Yeah. Margot's really good. She's written, I think I like, even though she's written kind of downplaying the femininity of it, or trying to overcompensate for being feminine and sometimes being too feminine, I think she plays it really well. Mm-hmm. And I, except for the fact that I've gotten my notes, man, Margot screams a lot in this movie, because she's all, when she's in peril, she's screaming. She's, but even the lesser ones, I liked. What's his name? Jackie Cooper. I thought was great as
He's
Perry
great.
White. Mm-hmm. And Gene Hackman, who is one of my favorite actors, just because I always call him a great utility actor. No matter what part he's in, he just does it great. From Hoosiers to The French Connection, everything he plays, I really like him in. But watching this again, I was like, man, I guess you had fun with this, but man, that must have sucked having to do this part.
I'll be honest with you. And when we get to casting, we'll do a few scenes and then get to casting. When we get to casting, it's going to take a hot minute because I've got a shit ton on casting.
True.
But I will say that I've always loved Gene Hackman and I adore Brando, but I've always heard they're assholes. And I think that rumor came from this film because they both were kind of jerks when it came to this film.
Seemed to be.
And I think it's because it's a comic book and none of them took it seriously. And in this world today, that is almost crazy to think because of how popular comic book movies are now. For them to think that this was a kid movie and that it was a joke to them when they were making it, kind of it's insulting. Yeah,
that makes sense. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, what about scenes? Do you have scenes that you liked or that
well, ironically enough, one of the ones that we just mentioned is when they have the General Zod and those criminals in that weird circle thing that keeps going around them. That scene mesmerizes me every time I watch it. Mm-hmm. But it's also Terrence Stamp and Marlon Brando, two really good actors. So
yeah. And I love the practical effect of the dual rings. Mm-hmm. That was really good. Yeah, I like that. That's a good one. I used to because I bought the music, the soundtrack. I had the album, the vinyl of this because I really liked Williams' music for it. And there's the biggest piece of it, which is like 12 minutes long, is called Superman's First Night, or Superman's Night Out, I think was it. But it basically starts when he leaves Lois and he's doing all the rescuing stuff, of his first night in from the helicopter on, kind of thing. And I like those sequences. Watching them again, I would have trimmed them. There's a lot of reaction of people standing on the street looking up at the helicopter. We got it. You don't need to show us more people stand there going, look up. And an ambulance drives up, and I'm like, why'd we call an ambulance? And we've got a helicopter hanging.
It's a bird. It's a plane.
Yeah. I think the music is a highlight to this because it conveys so much that the movie doesn't. Like Otis has his own theme, that doom, doom, doo, 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 that goofy doopy
comic.
Yeah.
I like, even though I think the Fortress of Solitude stuff is too long, I like the transition that you mentioned where he goes there as a teen, and then when he flies out, he's an adult. Showing that timing or that transition. I like that. I'm not so sure we had to have him rescue the cat in the tree.
Hey, that's so classic comic book, though. I mean,
well, that's what the problem is so much of this is that I like the end joke of him looking at the phone booth and it not being a phone booth. That was kind of funny.
That was funny.
Then they have to show him go through the revolving door to change costumes, or like you said, the helicopter incident where everyone else is watching it up, in the sky.
The helicopter was weird because he literally just changes as he falls out the window. And I'm like, not the helicopter, the next night, I guess, the next day when he goes, but he literally jumps out the window, and while he's falling, he changes into his costume. It just morphs on him. I'm going, what?
Because he's super fast.
Yeah,
he flew home and got that costume.
He flew home, got it, put it on, flew back.
I love the stuff with the Kents. I love the scene where, the truck falls and the baby's holding it up. But I have to say, and I don't know if it's because I've seen this movie a few times or not, but I totally knew Pa Kent was going to drop dead when he dropped dead. I don't know if it's because it was already there and I'd seen it, or because it felt that way. The way they structured it with the, come on, run with me.
Yeah, I do like that, though, going from the wide angle of them running to the close-up of him coming up and holding his arm and going, oh, no. And then the wide angle of him falling. I liked that scene a lot.
And
that
the
was
wife,
good cinematography.
Ma Kent, not noticing it very suddenly. She noticed it a few minutes later, probably. She didn't even realize.
That slow stand up. And then Jonathan. That was, I liked the death. That was well done. I like Valerie Perrine in this, although I can't remember her in anything else, but she's attractive in this. She's funny.
Oh, isn't she in Slaughterhouse-Five?
That's where I know her from.
Yeah. Love her.
Yeah.
A lot of people wanted that part, and she won it.
Well, she got it.
Yeah.
I don't like the climax of this movie. I don't like the double missile thing. I think it's a very James Bondy kind of trope, and it doesn't work for me emotionally or anything.
And the movie is long, but when he resolves it, because one of the missiles, folks out there, if you're not looking for spoilers that are 40-something years old, you better turn away. One of the missiles actually blows up and destroys some shit, and including killing Lois. So Superman decides to do what his father tells him not to do, which is mess with Earth's timeline, and spins around and takes us back in time to before it happened, so that he can resolve the situation. That is fine. But as soon as it's over, it's the credits roll. I was like, is that it? It was like all of a sudden that was the end of the movie. There was like nothing else.
Yeah. Even one little last scene of something, but nothing.
Nothing at all. I was like, okay, Donner, you were running a little long and you just cut it. You just stopped the movie right there.
This is due tomorrow. Okay, here, we're done. cut it here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I will say, as people who listen to the podcast and know me anyway, that doesn't work. Turning the planet backwards doesn't make time go back. It would make everybody on the planet have horrible,
Weather.
whiplash and weather and earthquakes, and it would actually be worse than what happened. But no, it does not make time go backwards because you do that. So
that's good to know that. Next time I try it, I won't do that.
I will say I like the miniature work in this movie. It's obviously miniature, but I like it. It's vintage. I like Krypton and all the miniatures. I like the Golden Gate Bridge and all the little, miniature bus and all that stuff. I liked all that. I think you see more of it in 2, if I remember correctly, because there's just more action sequences.
Right.
But,
I like the way they use crystals for everything.
Love
as far
that.
as like crystals are like their computers and things. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything is either crystal memory or some form of crystal control, everything. Although, again, for me, just making sense. It's a very comic book thing, I guess. But how would Clark know to take the green crystal with him? How would he know to throw the green crystal 1.5 miles away? And how would the green crystal suddenly know to build a cathedral? I guess because Brando said so or something. I don't know. Instinct. It's all instinct. Yeah, right.
It's the Kryptonian way.
And
but before I move into cast, I actually have some background on this as well. Do you know who? I mean, this is kind of like casting. It's just going to be dealing with the people that are involved with the production. Do you know who was offered this movie?
To direct?
Yeah.
No.
Steven Spielberg. He was offered a chance to direct it, but producers balked at the salary he asked for. They decided to see how Jaws would work when it was completed, and it was such a huge success that he just went on to other projects and just said, "See y'all."
I'll be doing Close Encounters now. You guys do your little.
That's exactly what he did. He went on to Close Encounters instead of this.
It was good.
I thought you would find that interesting.
I do find that interesting. That's in. Yeah.
2 other people were offered the chance to write it, and I honestly think that it might have been a better film because I don't know about Mario Puzo writing a screenplay. Or I mean, he came up with the story.
He was the story idea. Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, the story was Siegel and Schuster, who did the original comic book. Most of that was lifted from the 40s or the 1930s.
Yeah. Yep.
But William Friedkin and Sam Peckinpah were both offered the chance. Oh, excuse me, not to write, but to direct this film. Friedkin turned it down. Peckinpah dropped out of the running when he produced a gun during a meeting with Ilya Salkind, which sounds just like something you would hear about Peckinpah.
Of course you would. Yes. Yes.
He is the director of The Wild Bunch, for you folks out there that don't know that. George Lucas also turned it down.
Well, he was about to do Empire.
Right. Or actually, it says he in favor of Star Wars Episode 4 because this movie was in production for a long time.
It must have been then because 4 came out in 75.
Well, and Jaws came out. No, 4 came out in 77. Jaws came out in 75.
Jaws came out in 75. Yeah.
So all this shit was going on several years prior to them. And it was the same with casting Reeve. I mean, they didn't cast him until like the last minute as well. Francis Ford Coppola, John Guerman, I'm not sure who that is. Robert Aldrich, who I love. He used to do horror movies in the 60s. Yeah. And Norman Jewison were all approached to direct this film. I'm telling you, people were prejudiced against comic books at that time.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure.
But anyway, they said that they were either already on a film or it wasn't their type of film. People did not want to do Superman. What's wrong?
Well, part of it is probably the iconography of Superman itself, himself. That's got to be hard to say, we're going to try to make this a live action thing. It's not going to be animated. It's not a kid's movie, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could.
Yeah. And back to what I was saying earlier, I went to directors, but I was talking about writers. The the big get that could have happened that would have probably made this film great is that William Goldman was approached to write the screenplay. But
he probably could have.
Yeah, he turned it down, and as was Lee Brackett. Do you know who Lee Brackett is?
No, I do not know that.
Who that is. Salkind, and I wanted to get some info on the Salkinds from you, but Salkind hired Alfred Bester, but Salkind didn't think he was famous enough, so he hired Mario Puzo instead for $600,000. I mean, Mario wrote a book. Why is he writing screenplays?
Well, I mean, it may have been, he needed the money. No, I don't know.
They made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think had William Goldman written this script, I think we'd be talking about a better movie.
Mm-hmm.
William Goldman's a great screenplay writer, probably one of the best ever. So
yeah, he would have been much, much better than this, I think.
So anyway, that was my background stuff on directing and writing and all.
Well, and you mentioned the Salkinds, it was both of them. It was Alexander and his wife, and they are his daughter, I think. I think she's his daughter. Yeah, she is. It's Ilya. Ilya Salkind is Alexander's daughter.
Alexander and Ilya, yes.
Yeah. But he was producing back in the 50s.
Okay, I was wondering, why is he so famous? Because I had never heard of him.
He was a huge producer, especially in France. Back in the first one I just looked up is 1945. So right after the war, he was producing movies. He then, when he moved to the United States, he really became popular in 73 and 74 because he did back-to-back movies. Sound like Superman, called The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers.
Okay,
and
so that's what he's known for.
And both of those have one of your favorite actors in them.
Oliver Reed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what he was known for. That gave him huge clout in Hollywood. Those movies were popular. They worked really well. And suddenly he had everything he needed to go into Superman. And he pitched all three. As far as I know, the studio bought all three to begin with. So it was going to be a trilogy. He was calling it The Movie, 2, and Superman 3.
Well, he was ahead of his time as far as franchises then.
Yeah. But he was taken off of it I think by 3, he was pulled from it.
There's a lot of controversy surrounding the Salkinds because I read so many notes on it, and most of it dealt with firing people. Yeah. Like he fired. I mean, they were fighting with Donner, and they were fighting with Hackman and Brando. He fired Donner, and Donner had shot like 3/4 of the second movie.
Yep,
and a lot of that was reshot.
Yeah, a lot of it had to be reshot. That's true.
So much money.
Yep. But Richard Lester stepped into the second one. And again, I think he's a better director than Donner. And I think that's why it's a better movie.
It's definitely. Well, you also don't have the origin story. You don't have all that baggage.
Yeah, you don't have to have that. You can jump right into the story,
the action
itself, rather than the origin. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Origins always drag movies down. That's why we never need to see another Spider-Man one, because there's been like 4.
Yep.
Hasn't there? I think.
And it's been like Spider-Man. It's been reboot Superman. Zack Snyder wants to do it so bad, kind of thing.
Because he can't get it right.
Yeah. Well, there's that. Well, we'll talk about when we get the keys. Sure. But yeah, there was a lot of pre-production controversy. There was a lot of post-production controversy with this. I'm sure it might be a good time to do it. I'm sure there was controversy with casting Reeve.
There's so much casting shit on this movie. You're going to die. And some of it is ridiculous. Like my very first one, Paul Newman was offered the chance of playing Superman.
Okay.
They gave him the choice of playing either Superman, Lex Luthor, or Jor-El for $4 million. And he said, I don't want any of them.
I'm making some salad dressing. I don't have time for you guys.
Brando was only paid $1 million, and he was the highest paid actor, and they were going to throw $4 million at Paul Newman. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
For the time. This is 1976, 77, folks. That's a lot of money back then.
Yep.
Charlton Heston was offered the part of Jor-El. Honestly, it would have been ridiculous, but I would pay to see it right now.
Yeah, I would pay to see it. Yeah, me too. I would.
It would be hilarious. I would like to just see his audition
You're
tape.
going to Earth. Damn it.
Damn it. Okay, you already mentioned that Brando's salary made him the highest paid movie star in the world at the time.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm showing that it was 3.7 million. I thought they just paid him $1 million. Maybe I'm thinking of Elizabeth Taylor and Cleopatra. He was offered 3.7 million, which was a little less than they offered Paul Newman.
Yeah.
But he also got a percentage of the gross, which we all know that's magic these days. It was 12 days of shooting, 10 minutes of screen time.
But I think
$4 million.
the grosses came only after he sued the Salkins.
He sued, and so did someone else. I can't remember. I've got it in my notes somewhere because they were not handing over his.
He wanted points, baby. Give me my points
on all those Superman toys.
Yep.
I've got the payment also covered the sequel, which was shot at the same time. Brando did not appear in the sequel, though, because of that lawsuit. Yep. So they resurrected that film for like the third movie, I guess. Claiming Salkin had not paid him for a percentage of the profits, he ultimately received $14 million. So people can say all they want to about Brando, but he is a shrewd businessman.
He obviously he knows his value, sort of thing. Yeah. Wow.
I've got a little trivia about Brando to say within this casting thing. Cary Elwes was a production assistant. He was about 16.
Wow.
And his job was to bring Marlon Brando out of his trailer every day.
There you go.
Have you heard about this?
No. This way, Mr. Brando. I don't know. I haven't heard about this.
Well, Brando, who was paid $1 million a day in overages, had very little incentive to leave his trailer. All of this is according to Elwes in an interview that he gave on NPR several years after.
Okay.
And Brando never called him Cary. He always referred to him as Rocky.
Rocky.
Can you just make up names? But it's classic Brando because he was a jokester. He was always fucking with people. Gene Hackman, as we said.
Before you jump on to Gene, I've got a small trivia about Brando that I looked up, and it was his idea for Jor-El to wear the S, for it to become.
I did see that.
For it to become the crest of the family, and that led to the design with all of them wearing the crests. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. When we get to trivia, I'm going to get into some more Brando oddities. I'm not going to make casting go forever, but yeah, I'm going to talk Brando because he's one of my favorites.
Oh yeah.
And I can't think of another science fiction or horror film we'll ever do with him in it.
No.
Unless we do that really bad Dr. Moreau movie. Gene Hackman, as we mentioned, played Lex Luthor. There were other people up for that role based upon the time, mid to late 70s. Any guesses?
No. What?
I've got that George Kennedy, Jack Nicholson, and Gene Wilder were all considered.
Jesus.
I can see Jack pulling it off, and Jack wouldn't have mind shaving his head, probably. Yeah. I mean, because for those of you that don't know, Gene refused to shave his head, so they designed his hair to look like bad toupees.
Yeah. That's just no. I guess I couldn't see Gene Wilder though, at all.
It would have been more comedic.
More.
Yeah, you're right there. It was weird that Gene was playing him kind of funny too. I don't really have anything else on that, but I will move on to Christopher Reeve because I have a shit ton on him as far as the role of Superman and everybody that wanted to be Superman.
Right.
The search began, as I said, in 1975, and it ended with a press announcement on February 23rd of 1977. just 35 days before filming started.
Okay.
So they didn't cast him until a month before they started. And he was an unknown relatively at the time.
Oh yeah.
Numerous, and I mean numerous actors were considered for the part of Superman. Also ridiculous people, just like I said about Jor-El, including Muhammad Ali.
Okay.
Warren Beatty, John Beck, I'm not sure who that is, Charles Bronson, James Caan, Sam Elliott. I mean, you got to remember they were young at the time, but they don't have the all-American look.
No, these are all cowboys.
Yes, they're all cowboys. You're right.
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman.
But obviously Donner liked cowboys. I mean, from Terrence Stamp and everybody else in the movie, kind of thing. He must have liked
Terrence
that.
Stamp in a Western?
No, Terrence Stamp was in a Western.
He was
in a few Western. Yeah. I'll look him up. You do your.
He played a drag queen in Priscilla. I don't know if did he do Sergio Leone movies?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe. All right. James Caan, Sam Elliott, Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman, isn't he like 4 feet tall?
Yeah, he's like, yeah.
Burt Reynolds, Chris Christopherson, Nick Nolte, Al Pacino, Robert Redford, who they really seriously considered. I'll get into that in a minute. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ryan O'Neal, Jeff Bridges, Jan Michael Vincent, David Soul, Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, John Voight, and Elton John.
What?
It reads like a comic book cast. It's crazy.
No.
When when Warren Beatty and Robert Redford turned down the role, so those were their two tops. When they turned them down, Nolte and Voight became number 1 and number 2. So, I mean, Nick Nolte was very good looking back then and young. So, I mean, they would have had to dye his hair, but he could have done it. John Voight, I don't see it at all.
No, not at all.
At least Nick Nolte looks big. John Voight doesn't look big to me.
No.
Steve McQueen was considered for Superman. He ultimately was rejected for being out of shape.
Okay.
Robert Redford, Clint Eastwood, and James Caan were all offered the title role. All 3 turned it down. Redford wanted too much money. Eastwood said he was too busy, and Caan said, "There's no way I'm getting in that silly suit."
Yeah, well, yeah, I couldn't imagine James Caan as that. No.
But why stop there? James Brolin, Lyle Wagner, and Perry King all auditioned for the part.
Now, Lyle Wagner wouldn't have the acting chops, but he could have looked the part.
A little bit, maybe. He was doing Wonder Woman. Unknown at the time, John Travolta auditioned for the role. The Salkins, however, turned him down. Travolta went on that very year to star in Grease, which became the highest grossing film of the year.
Yep.
Harrison Ford auditioned for the role. So yeah, I mean, Harrison Ford, though, he was too rugged. He was not clean
still
cut.
too rugged to do the especially to do the Clark Kent stuff.
All right, well, let's go a little more.
Although
rugged.
he tries to do that with Indiana. Indiana Jones is one of my keys for this because it's kind of the superhero when I'm in this environment and when I'm over here I'm the
I can see that.
Klutz.
But he's still not clean cut.
But he's not clean cut enough. No, not at all.
And let's go a little bit further on that spectrum. Sylvester Stallone lobbied hard to play this part.
Yo, Lois!
Yo, Lois. Another candidate that was often mentioned was Burt Reynolds, because he was super hot at the time, Smokey and the Bandit and all that stuff was coming out.
Yep.
But he was deemed too recognizable and not temperamentally suited for the role. If Reynolds had gotten the role, he would have been recruited. I mean, he would have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Reunited with Warren Beatty because they had just done Deliverance a few years earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And had John Voight been cast, it would have been all 3 of them, but none of them, except for Ned Beatty, is in this movie.
Yeah.
Now, here to me is the best choice.
Okay.
However, he doesn't have the chops because he's never done anything really great. And it was Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son. If you look at Patrick Wayne, he looks like Superman.
Really? I've never even heard of Patrick Wayne. So
well, he was
I'll have to look him up.
Well, he's in TV stuff. He never really made it big, but he looks like Superman. He was a very, very handsome man. But because of actually, he was offered the role and he had to drop out because John Wayne had cancer at the time and he couldn't do it.
Okay.
And I don't know how. I mean, maybe he would have gone on to have a great career had he got cast or had he done the part.
Maybe. I mean, Reeve did. So
Okay.
yeah.
So-
yeah, he is handsome. He was very, very 50s handsome. Fabian kind of look to him.
Dark hair, clean shaven,
very clean cut. Yeah,
Mhm.
he would have been good.
But let's not stop there.
Oh my God.
Caitlyn Jenner, then Bruce Jenner, turned down the role of Clark Kent to appear in the Village People musical Can't Stop the Music.
We should have known then, you know.
Well, there's a tie to both those films if you didn't know it. Valerie Perrine is in both of them.
Oh, there you go.
So there's another movie Valerie Perrine was in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get to why they picked Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve was picked from over 200 actors who auditioned for the role. So he had something that they saw.
Mm-hmm.
In order to obtain the musculature to convincingly play him, he underwent a bodybuilding regime supervised by David Prowse, Darth Vader himself, and bulked up. Which I guess he's probably the first to ever do that for a superhero movie that I can think of, because the superheroes of the 60s look skinny.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at like Batman, Adam West.
Adam West was skinny. Yeah.
For his portrayal of Clark Kent, Christopher Reeve based his performance on Cary Grant's character in Bringing a Baby, which I think is very smart.
Okay.
It's romantic, it's comedic, and it's and then the heroism comes with the role.
Right.
So I mean, I don't guess Superman would be as suave as Cary Grant, but I see where you got the mannerisms from that movie as far as comedic timing. Ned Beatty played Otis. I was not familiar with Otis. I was familiar with Lex Luthor, but not Otis.
Wasn't Otis just created for this movie?
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't remember. I never read the comics, but I don't remember an Otis from the comics.
Yeah, I was more of a Marvel guy. I mean, I did read some Batman, but I never really read Superman. He auditioned for the part of Otis, the bumbling accomplice. Dustin Hoffman apparently turned down Lex Luthor. So maybe that's what they wanted Dustin Hoffman for. Maybe it wasn't Superman in that paragraph I had before.
Don't know.
So anyway, that's all I have as far. Oh, I'm sorry. Peter Boyle auditioned, but he didn't get it.
For Otis?
For Otis, yeah.
That would have been interesting. I'd like to see him.
I mean, I think either one could do it for what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Luthor.
I do like Ned Beatty.
I do too. Yeah. And I think he has a lot of fun in this part. I just think it's not the best, role for the movie.
No. It makes the movie funny, and it's hard enough getting people to take Superman seriously. Clearly, the people that didn't want to play him thought that.
Yeah.
And to make it comedic makes it even less serious. So,
yeah.
Perry White was played by Jackie Cooper. I'm a huge Jackie Cooper fan, because I'm a huge Our Gang Little Rascals fan, and he was a child actor in the Little Rascals.
Yes.
And I can see his face right now. Jack Klugman was the first choice to play this part.
I could see that with a cigar and everything. Yeah.
There you go. Oscar Madison himself.
See, that one kind of makes sense to me. None of these others have made sense.
Well, and Spider-Man has his equivalent, J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're the same
cigar chomping editor. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But he turned it down last minute. Eddie Albert of Green Acres tentatively agreed to the part, but then wanted more money. So with filming starting like the very next day, there was like a frantic search for a replacement, which resulted in Keenan Wynn. And after a long flight, the 61-year-old was rushed to the studio for tests, but had chest pains and had to go to the hospital. Right. So they still didn't have a Perry White.
Wow.
Ed Asner, talk about typecasting.
Mm-hmm.
Because he already
Mr.
played
Grant.
the same role, Mr. Grant, in the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Mr. Grant.
Martin Balsam, who is a very underrated actor that I love.
Yeah.
Walter
very much
Matthau.
so. Yeah.
Jason Robards. I mean, everyone I'm naming could do this part.
Yep.
And then someone named Lawrence Tierney. I'm not sure who that is. And Eli Wallach. And I could see Eli Wallach doing it.
I could see Gene Hackman in that role. You know, he could do Perry White as well.
He would have been better as that than Luthor. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
and I mentioned Jason Robards, but even the presence of Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman couldn't convince him to take the part.
Wow.
It's because they don't like comic books. I'm telling you, these people
it had to be. Yeah.
Biased.
I mean, he did A Boy and His Dog. Come on.
Right. I know he's done some shitty movies. Why wouldn't he do a blockbuster? Anyway, Gene Hackman played Pa Kent. I don't have anything else. I mean, not Gene Hackman. Glenn Ford. Sorry.
Glenn Ford.
Ford. I have always loved Glenn Ford. I don't have any other information about that part, probably because he was a great get to be in that part.
He was perfect in that role. His lines worked, his acting worked. He was great. He was great in that role.
I totally agree. It was very similar to when they cast what's his face as Spider-Man's father.
Oh yeah. I can't remember his name right now, but I know exactly who you're talking about. I see him.
Wasn't he in Flowers for Algernon? No, Cliff Roberts.
Cliff Robertson.
Yeah.
Wait. So Spider-Man also has a dead parent.
Oh, there's the cliches are on and on and on in comic books with Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. They're all very, very similar.
Wow. I had never see how dense I am. I've never put that together, that both of them have
Batman's
mean screaming editors and both of them have father figures that died. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go.
I mean, Superman's the only one from another planet. The other two are Earthlings, but they all had issues with either dual parents or dead parents. Yeah.
See, you learn things in these Johnny Has the Keys episodes. Look at us. Okay.
Actually, Spider-Man's, I want to say, no, it was Uncle something and Aunt May. Yeah.
Right.
Because he didn't have parents. So it was his uncle and aunt. But yeah.
Right.
Trevor Howard played the first elder. Okay, let's move on to Lois. Margot Kidder, among the actresses who screen tested for the role of Lois Lane. Others that screen tested were Ann Archer. I could see that. Leslie Ann Warren. I could see that.
Yes.
Deborah Raffin. I don't know who that is.
I don't know that one.
Or Susan Blakely. Do you know her?
No.
Stockard Channing.
No.
She's a little too masculine, I think, for the role.
Well, and she went on to Grease.
You know what? Yeah, so she was in the biggest movie of that year too. And then April Byron, who I don't know
know that name either.
So these are all 70s actresses that were, I guess, popular at the time. One of the reasons Margot Kidder was chosen over them was the fact that she was the only one that saw humor in the line, "What color underwear am I wearing?"
Huh.
So it was her line reading or interpretation that got her the role over those people.
Okay.
I have some that you're going to love that were considered.
Okay.
Starting with Shirley MacLaine, Liza Minnelli, Christina Rains, who I'm not sure who that is, Barbara Streisand.
What? Okay.
And Natalie Wood. Natalie's too pretty. She's not
too. Yeah. She's glamorous. She's much too glamorous.
Yeah.
For that.
I mean, I would consider her. I would consider Natalie Wood white collar to Margot Kidder's blue collar. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so.
Doing analogies.
Yeah.
Another one that
like Margot Kidder's in that same thing as like what's the one with the great voice? Not Helen Hunt. The other one, Holly Hunter.
Holly Hunter.
Yeah, that range of, like you said, blue collar. Yeah,
blue collar. Right? Frances McDermott or
Yes.
McDermott.
Yes.
Yeah. Another person turned this role down who was extremely popular at the time, and you'll see why. And I could see her doing it. They would have had to color her hair, but it was Jessica Lange. She's a little too pretty too, though.
Little too pretty, but she probably could have.
I mean, Jessica's just got the chops. I mean, her husband was Sam Shepard.
Yeah.
Another person was considered for this that is really surprising, and it was Jennifer Jason Leigh. But she was way too young, so that she didn't get it. I mean, she didn't do Fast Times until 4 years later. And that's high school.
Maybe she could play like Lana or whatever, the girl at the high school.
Yeah,
or
maybe that's what they meant. But the note I had says Lois.
Yeah,
and that she was too young.
That would have been way too young.
She should have been with the teen Clark. That would have made more sense.
Yeah.
And then another person, very much like Jessica Lange, that was popular at the time that was considered was, of course, Carrie Fisher.
I could see her do it.
I can too.
And she could do the comedy. Yeah,
very much so.
She could do the comedy and she could do the straight romantic part of it. Yeah. That would have been good for her.
Yeah. Who else? Okay, back to Eve Tessmacher. Miss Tessmacher. How many times could you say that?
A lot.
All right. Valerie Perrine was cast in that role, but the first choice, and this is perfect actually, is Goldie Hawn. They wanted her to do it.
If you're going to play the humor, yes, go with that.
Mm-hmm. Another one that was approached but asked too much money was Anne Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
I can see her doing it too.
You see that?
Yeah. Because you want this girl to be sexy.
Yes.
Yeah.
She has to be sexy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Another one that campaigned for this role was Stella Stevens.
Ooh.
And she would have been good. She's very popular at the time. She had done the Poseidon Adventure. Remember, she was Ernest Borgnine's wife on Poseidon Adventure.
Yep.
God almighty, how many movies are in my head? Anyway, that's all I have. Valerie Perrine got the part, and I think she's great in it.
Yep.
General Zod, who is not in this movie for very long.
No. So good. And just like 2 lines, you're going, yeah. And see, I was all in because I was going, can't wait till he comes back. Him and Ursa, it's going to be great. And it got to the end of the movie and went, well, dang, I was thinking about the sequel.
Yeah. Maybe we should have done them both because the sequel is better. Yeah.
It is.
Well, you know what? I think it's on our list. We can still do it down the road.
Yeah.
Somebody else was up for that part, and he's perfect too. Do you have any guesses who it would be if it wasn't that British actor?
No. For General Zod?
Yeah.
None.
Christopher Lee.
Ooh.
He turned it down, but he had just moved to Hollywood as a tax exile and did not want to return to England where they shot.
Yep. I can't pay the taxes.
But Christopher Lee would have been great in that role, but Terrence Stamp is great too.
It would have been interesting too, casting to put him as Jor-El too. Christopher Lee as Jor-El might be interesting. I could see that.
I could see it. I mean, I could watch him in anything.
Yeah, well, it's great. But
Ma Kent was played by a relatively unknown woman that, to me, her name was Phyllis Thaxter. She was like a 50s actress.
Yeah, big 50s actress.
Okay. Well, they wanted Joan Crawford for the role, but Crawford was too ill and died shortly after. I mean, she was an alcoholic from what I remember, or at least what I've read. But she did that Spielberg Night Gallery in like 71, and we're talking 77, 78. So she would have probably been close to death, I imagine. You mentioned Laura. Oh no, you mentioned Lana. Laura. There's too many L name women in this movie.
There are
you got Lana, Lois, and Laura.
Laura
is Jor-El's wife, Superman's real mother, and Susanna York is who played her.
Yes.
At one point, Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward were offered the roles.
Oh, yeah. When you said Paul Newman, yes.
Well, I had also heard he was offered Superman, but apparently he and his wife as a couple were offered the parents.
Okay.
And but apparently the British Acting Union were concerned about the amount of American actors joining the production. So that played into it some way, don't be giving all our jobs to Americans, I guess.
Right.
But this is also the reason why an offer to Orson Welles was withdrawn, because they wanted Orson Welles, I think, to play Jor-El.
To play Jor-El. He would have the power, but man, it wouldn't be the same. It would not be the same.
Right. And that's the reason why the Krypton elders are almost all played by British actors. The jury, they show those three guys.
I call them the council.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Susanna York is great. That is one of my favorite scenes of the movie, is the scene between her and Jor-El, where she's thinking about all the things that are bad that could happen to her son, and Jor-El is saying all the positives that could happen. I liked that scene. I think it was very well written with the two of them.
I agreed. And I don't know if I put it in my notes of trivia later, but Susanna York had issues with Brando too.
Well, she went on to be in the sequels, I think. I think she was in 2 and 3.
Oh, that makes sense, because they didn't want to use
They didn't want to use Brando. Do we have the mom still?
Let's just get the mom. Fuck the dad. But anyway, that is all I have as far as casting, as if that wasn't enough. I mean, that was a lot.
That's a lot. And you didn't even touch on Ursa, who is, great in the second one. Sarah Douglas is great.
She is the villain, right?
Yeah, she's the one, the female villain that is
very
imprisoned.
Carrie-Anne Moss looking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she is. That would be a huge key for her in this. Yes.
I have a few awards I can mention. This movie was not on the 1001 movies you must see before you die, for obvious reasons.
Yes.
However, it won an Academy Award for special achievement. I don't know what that is. Oh, for visual effects, it says at the bottom. So maybe it won for visual effect. You can see a man fly.
Yes, you will believe a man can fly.
That's it. You will believe a man can fly. It was nominated for best sound, best editing, best score, but it did not win. It only won for special effects. However, the BAFTA Awards gave it most promising newcomer to Christopher Reeve. So it won that, and was nominated for cinematography, art direction, sound, and supporting actor Gene Hackman. Our friends at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films, Saturn Awards were much more kinder. They gave it best science fiction film, best actress with Margot Kidder, best music with John Williams, best special effects, best production design. It was nominated for actor Christopher Reeve, supporting actress Valerie Perrine, director Richard Donner, and costumes, but it was not a winner of those. But they still gave it 5 awards. Yeah. So that,
it was interesting. Maybe its popularity was its uniqueness of a big budget comic book movie, but also compared, because I looked up the year, and then that year had Halloween, Deer Hunter, Grease, you said, Animal House, and Magic. The other one, we talked about doing. All those came out the same year. So maybe people were just looking for a little fun. That's why Grease and Superman became so popular.
It was 1978, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to double check that 1001 list, because I'm not sure. I double check just in case.
Yeah.
But that's what I have as far as casting and awards.
That's crazy. I've got just a couple of other watch notes. Larry Hagman. I didn't even know he was in this. What the hell? He's
got a cameo. I mean, it wouldn't be a cameo at the time. I don't know. I mean, he was already on Dallas. I guess it would, yeah.
Because it would be like Cannonball Run's kind of cameos at the time.
Right.
That was, that was wild. I've got one of my watch notes. Not a lot of gravity going on with this Lois flight. And we could have cut a lot of that, and especially the poetry stuff, which was going to be a song, I read.
It was. And
It was-
they had her do the read over, or what do you call that?
Just the voiceover.
Voiceover. Yeah.
Can you read my mind? Oh, it was so bad.
I don't want to.
It's so bad.
It is bad.
But yeah, not a lot of gravity going on there. They give Superman all these abilities, like he can super spin and dig a hole. And then later on, when he's holding up the fault line, the San Andreas fault line, he fills in all the dirt. No, that wouldn't happen. His suit becomes like magic. I have in the notes. Great miniatures. Margot does a lot of screaming.
Yeah, she does.
And why is there a meteorite? He says, Jor-El mentions at least, I think he says the 28 known galaxies, but he says also something later on in that montage of the 12 galaxies you'll pass through to get to Earth.
Right. I remember him saying it takes a long time and it would be over a span of space.
Right.
Yeah.
But then Luthor finds a meteorite that came from Krypton that landed on Earth.
Well, wouldn't it be just shortly after?
Why would it get all the way to Earth? He was in a propelled vehicle that was going to Earth. These were just pieces that went 12 galaxies away.
Well, some of them had to come
Earth.
towards us.
Well, oh my gosh. Yes, Mr. Salkin. Sounds good to me.
It was shortly after Superman blasted off that the planet blew up.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Comic book logic.
Yeah, it's okay.
I did look up that 1001 before you must see before you die, and it did not make the list. However, Grease did.
There you go. Add a little music and it would have been perfect. Yeah. Keys? Do you have what keys?
Well, I've got a little bit of trivia.
Oh, you got trivia? Sure. There
this
is a ton of trivia on this movie, by the way. If you go to IMDb or even just Google Superman 78 trivia, it's crazy.
Well, honestly, most of mine's about Brando because I find Brando fascinating. I've read a zillion books on him and I adore him. I
actually watched it on Prime. And, if you watch anything on Prime Video, if you click on it, you get all the trivia per scene. So if you stop and start each scene, you get all the trivia of that scene. And there's tons on this movie.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The one I don't have, or the one that I do have that's not Brando related, is fascinating to me. It was Superman was the highest grossing Warner Brothers movie of the 1970s. Do you know what the highest Warner Brothers movie of the 1980s was?
No.
Batman.
Wow.
Yeah. Does that tell you why we are where we are today?
Pre-Marvel. Yeah. There you go.
I thought that was fascinating, to do that by decade. Okay. Just a couple of things on Brando. I'll probably read them just because I have them and I don't want to screw them up. Marlon Brando reputedly suggested that his cameo role as Jor-El be done by him in voiceover only. The guy did not like to work. With his character's image on screen being a glowing, levitating green bagel.
Bagel? Okay,
yes.
Sure.
When Richard Donner met Brando,
I've had this idea.
Exactly. He was always doing this shit. When he met Brando, the actor proposed that he played Jor-El as not as a suitcase, but as a bagel. I don't know where the suitcase came from. Brando reasoned that no one knows what people on Krypton look like, but that Jor-El would know what people on Earth look like and would therefore make his son look human so he could blend in. Tom Mankiewicz even recalled that at one point, Brando pitched the idea that maybe Kryptonians don't even talk. They simply make electronic sounds that are translated through subtitles. Donner refused these suggestions. They turned out to be a ruse, and Brando had used it to test him because he liked to test his directors.
Oh, my God.
That's hilarious. I'm going to be in this movie, but don't use my voice or my image.
Yeah. Just make me a bagel.
Just make it an electronic sound and a bagel. Give me the check and I'm out of here.
A bagel that clicks. Give me my $4 million.
And then lastly, and this is kind of sad, but the comments both Richard Donner and Christopher Reeve have made about Brando not working very hard on this movie match up with its history. In a documentary about Brando, Jane Fonda says Brando did not like to work. Brando never matched that career peak. His dismissive behavior toward acting would divide his colleagues. This is not a dedicated actor who was going to do his craft, Jane Fonda says. This man brought so much joy to the rest of us, but he never enjoyed it. And I thought, wow, that's sad.
That is sad. Yeah.
Because everyone wanted to work with him. Everyone respected him and loved him. And he just treated everything as a joke. So
sad.
Yeah.
Sad.
So that's the last I'm going to say about Mr. Brando for this episode.
I had just a little bit relating to, just wanted to mention, we talked about casting and everything else, but Christopher Reeve is great in this movie. Mm-hmm. And it kind of reminded or triggered me when you said sad, because it was very sad what happened with him and his career and everything. Because I keep remembering, I was watching this, I was going, it wasn't just Superman, because he did Somewhere in Time, which is, one of my favorite movies.
Richard Matheson.
No, Christopher Reeve. Yeah, with Richard Matheson.
I'm talking about it's a Richard Matheson project. Yeah.
Yeah. And, he did Death Trap, Ira 11, and, I like that version of it as well.
He did a really funny take on that old screwball comedy about the news office too. I can't remember the name of it, but it was him and it's not Working Girl, but it's very similar to Working Girl. And it came out before Working Girl.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember, but it was a remake of an old Cary Grant film, which makes sense because he liked Cary Grant.
I remember he did Noises Off, and it wasn't really good, but that was because of the choices they made. It wasn't him, and it wasn't Carol Burnett. It was just the fact that they were told to play it American, and that doesn't work for that.
And didn't he play Freddie? I think he played Freddie in that.
Yeah. But he had he was just so layered. Compare Clark to Superman, and then also to Superman being the sexy Superman, the kind of wooing Lois sort of stuff. It's really good. Really good.
Yeah. Work. He plays him super nerdy, almost caricaturishly.
Yes, but just under. He's not Jerry Lewising it, kind of thing. So it's just under the getting the coat caught in the bathroom door, just enough to jerk it once, and then, okay, it's there.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Or him trying to talk the guy out of robbing Lois's purse.
Right.
Taking Lois's purse. Yeah. That kind of stuff.
So, I didn't want us to, jump into the ending without saying, what a great job. I don't think this movie would have been as successful without him in that role. No. Nor the sequels, for that matter.
Agreed.
Sort of thing. Yeah.
Even the one with Richard Pryor.
Even the one with Richard Pryor.
Oh, shall we go on to keys?
Yeah.
I have just a couple off the cuff that are a little odd in my own, and then I have, of course, those I've lifted from IMDb. My biggest one, and you're probably already going to mention this because this is one of your favorite things, and is Peter Pan. This movie reminds me of Peter Pan.
Yep, very much so.
And you'd believe a boy could fly in that. So
there you go.
Believe a man would fly in this.
Yep, I can see that. I've got Wizard of Oz too. There's a Wizard of Oz feel to this.
I said that about Escape from New York.
Yeah, but in places to me, especially, I think maybe it first hit me with the huge floating Jor-El head talking to him was kind of like the wizard.
That explains it perfectly.
Yeah, and that kind of, I think, is what triggered me on that one. I've got a lot of movie references, so other movies that.
Well, back to your Wizard of Oz thing, Jor-El and Krypton was very cavernous and empty too, and so was the Wizard's palace at Oz. It was very
huge, expansive, large, but kind of thing. Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, I've got John Ford Westerns already mentioned because all the panoramas, especially when they're in Smallville, but also on Krypton and everything else. And David Lean, this is a very David Lean kind of feel to it because we're focused on our hero from almost the first minute. And we're telling that hero's journey, which is another big key because this is definitely the hero's journey. So much so.
Is that Lawrence of Arabia in particular?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
David Lean did Lawrence of Arabia, Bridge on the River Kwai, Dr. Zhivago. All those are his epics.
Mhm.
And there's a sense of trying to make this movie bigger than life kind of thing.
I see.
And
only in a
and
modern sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I have another one that you're just going to tell me I'm completely ridiculous. Is Land of the Lost, that old Saturday morning television show.
Yeah.
They
Chaka,
always used
real
crystals.
Harry.
They were always putting crystals into pegs on that show to make things happen, with the slee stacks or whatever, to make doors open, things like that. So there was always a science fiction-y type twist to the fact that they were in prehistoric times.
Yeah. Enoch, I think was the name of the gold slee stack who controlled the crystal matrix.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Well, and while you're there, I have one that I hadn't thought of Land of the Lost, but I thought of Babylon 5 because Babylon 5, they use data crystals. Everything, all their computers, everything use data crystals.
How cool.
And they look almost like they're not the long linear ones like in Superman, but they're crystals. So yeah, crystal technology. And I think there were times when that became a part of the Star Trek franchise. I think it was around Deep Space Nine, where they had crystals that were intelligent or part of the computer matrix system. So.
I'm going off. My mind is drifting and thinking, where did New Age stuff influence this?
That's a good point.
I mean, I have crystals that people have given me.
Yeah.
Yeah. How funny.
You look at the other part of Jor-El's apartment. There's like a Himalayan salt stone there, or whatever.
Right. Or one of those that you can actually cook on, like I have in my kitchen.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. You mentioned a movie shortly, or not too long ago, and it was Somewhere in Time.
Mm-hmm.
But did you realize that is also a movie where he goes back in time to be with a woman he loves? Big key right there.
Yeah.
Two movies involving time travel and losing your love.
There you go. One's believable, though, and the other one's not. They're just saying. Anyway.
Really? I didn't know either one of them was.
Well, yeah, because he wills it to be. I mean, that's the kind of thing.
But that damn penny.
Again, lots of other movie references. I've got Watchmen because Dr. Manhattan's cathedral that he builds is very similar to the Fortress of Solitude. And I am not certain if I'm pretty sure this influenced the comic book, which then influenced, of course, the movie.
Well, and it's also a DC property, and so is Superman.
So it's that same kind of feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
James Bond movies in general, from the way the action sequences are staged, even like the missile heist and all that is right up there with like Spy Who Loves Me or any of those later 70s, early 80s James Bonds.
Well, so how would Sean Connery or Roger Moore get to both of them at the same time?
It would be Roger. It would be Roger.
It would be Roger Moore by then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how he would do that.
Yeah. And also Irwin Allen movies. The disaster, the whole thing and the end of this reminded me of the way the montage is done. And people running and people even at the beginning on Krypton, and things fall. And it's just so Irwin Allen.
Well, and all the stuff with the fault line. All that stuff is just like Earthquake. I haven't seen that movie since I was a little kid, but I can still picture
Maybe that's why Charlton Heston didn't do it. This is too much like Earthquake. I don't want to.
The only thing I remember about Earthquake is the studio backlot tour at Disney Hollywood Studios.
Oh, where the thing would fall and the tram.
You'd be on the tram and fire would be going up. And,
yeah.
What else? Let's see. This I lifted from IMDb. This is not me, and I should have known it because I've seen both of them. In the final shot where Superman flies into space, the sun is rising over Earth, very similar to Stanley Kubrick's 2001.
2001. That's a
Yeah.
good one. That's a good one. Of course, we have to mention Snyder and Man of Steel, the direct reboot of this movie. So
what is it called? It's called Man of Steel.
Man of Steel. And it's actually not bad for a Snyder movie. There's stuff that doesn't work in it. And he takes a lot of liberties with the story. Like, I think if I remember correctly, I think Jor-El, General Zod actually kills Ma Kettle or Ma Kent. Ma Kettle. Ma Kent. In it, but it's got some good moments, but it's very Zack Snyder all the way through. So, like I said,
don't hate Zack Snyder.
I don't either. I
like Watchmen, and I love Watchmen, the remake of Dawn of the Dead a little. Yeah, but it's everything after that seems to go down the toilet.
Yeah,
I didn't mind. A lot of people think that his Superman and Batman movies are too dark. I don't mind them because I kind of look for different interpretations sometimes. Yeah, but I have not gone as far as to watch like Aquaman or the Justice League. I haven't even seen Wonder Woman.
Well, I watched Aquaman, but I don't think he directed Aquaman.
He didn't, but he did do Justice League.
Yeah, and both of them are terrible.
Okay,
I have seen them both, and they're both horrible movies. I think we can't do Keys, without mentioning the fact that this was based on the comics, which came out in
Action
30s.
Comics.
Yeah, Action Comic #1, isn't it, or something like that? See, I don't even know comics.
I'm not sure if it's the number, but I know that it was 1939.
1939 Action Comic, yeah. Because I think the cover that they always show of the classic is, him holding up the car.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the majority of my keys.
You could always say New York City is Metropolis. Because it is
same as Gotham.
They call it Metropolis. It's same as Gotham City.
Yeah.
So, and then any other superhero movies that have come since. Because literally, I know they made some Batman movies back in the 40s, but was this the first superhero movie? George Reeve did Superman on television.
Yeah.
But
I wanted to throw that out to anybody listening or watching this, because in my research, I could not find an earlier superhero movie. So I think this was really the beginning of this was the first superhero adaptation.
They did a Batman movie based on the television series, but I think it was a TV movie. I don't think it was a theatrical release. I can't remember.
I think it was theatrical, but I don't think it was. I still don't ever equate that show with superheroes. I just don't. It was a comedy about villains.
And Lee Merriweather played Catwoman, whereas Julie Newmar and Eartha Kitt did it on television. I do know they recast Catwoman for that movie. But yeah, I can't think. I can think of television series, and I'm pretty sure that if you look up Batman, there were some really awful ones, like in the 40s, where a guy just runs in a room with a mask and starts socking people. Right? It's just not going to have a lot of special effects, but.
And all the criminals are like that one guy in the alley from this one with the gun. They're that. And honestly, cliche.
Now that I think about it, it might not have even been a movie. It might have been a serial, like Flash Gordon.
I just Googled, just to kind of keep us honest.
I was hoping you were.
The first 10 superhero films ever made. And this I don't agree with. So the number 1 is The Mark of Zorro. Zorro is not a superhero.
Not really. But no.
Number 2 is Don Q, son of Zorro. This was in the 20s.
Okay.
Number 3, The Bold Caballero. Again, Zorro, 1936. Flash Gordon, 1936. I don't consider Flash Gordon a superhero.
No.
He's a spaceman. He's number 5, Zor-El Rides Again. No, you
Was that
guys.
Flash Gordon a movie or a serial, or does it say?
Reprised their roles. These were the serials thrown together as movies. So Flash Gordon's Trip to Mars.
Yeah.
Flash Gordon, The Spider's Web. Never heard of this movie before. A millionaire playboy named Richard Wentworth with his own violent brand of vigilante justice. So maybe a precursor to Batman, 1938. The Lone Ranger, not a superhero. Zorro's Fighting Legion, not a superhero. And Buck Rogers, again, not a superhero. So I think this is the first.
Well, maybe you need to do 20 because maybe there were more in between because they didn't mention the Batman one.
Well, no, these were just in the 20s and 30s.
Oh,
1920s, 1930s. So the first 10 supposedly.
Well, that was before
superhero
Superman existed. If it was in the 20s, so that's why they're saying Zorro.
Yeah. So we didn't even have the comic books to base them on by the 20s. So there's that. Again, I think, is that all your keys?
It is all my keys. I mean, superheroes. What can you say?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's unfortunate because, like I said, to begin with, I think I remembered this movie much more fondly than it really is. I do think it made an impression on me. I do think it's a movie worth watching, but I think the sequel's better.
Back to that subject that I said was coincidental as far as having different experience with this the first time and now. I wanted this movie to be really good. I thought, you know what? I don't remember it as good. I bet it's really, really good now. And it wasn't.
And it wasn't.
Yeah. I was like, damn it.
Yep.
I mean, it's got a great cast. It's well made, solid director, good music. I didn't mention it, but I swear to you, the John Williams music in this to me sounds a lot like Star Wars.
No. See, you said that. And I went, no, it does not. No.
But anyway,
I mean, it may sound similar because he's using the same orchestra. This is the London Philharmonic Orchestra did all this music, the same ones that did New Hope and Empire. Yeah.
Well, it's a classic example of the sum of great parts don't always make a great film.
Right.
Because it's got so many elements that say this should work on paper, and it doesn't really. Even the special effects are good, in places.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it was we should have had a rewrite of the script and decide what kind of movie we're telling.
Get Goldman on the phone.
And it might have been the fact that they were trying to do them both at the same time. You know what I mean? So Donner was probably pacing for a 2-movie kind of arc, maybe. You know what I mean? So maybe that's why this one is so slow and he takes so long on Krypton and so long in the flight.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. But we're glad you guys listened to us. And
we would like to thank you for joining us of our first film in January of 2023. That is Richard Donner's Superman 1978.
Yeah.
For those of you that are watching us on YouTube, we would like you to subscribe. Hit that button right now. Ring that bell. Get notifications because we do have a YouTube show. If you are listening to us in the airwaves of podcast land, then we would love it if you would leave a rating or a review, or write a review. But if not, you can always leave a 4 or 5 star rating would be great. But any rating at all would be wonderful. And then lastly, if you like what you hear here, see how I do that?
Here. Yeah.
You can always join us for additional material as well as some subscription-based content over on Patreon, where we are doing other sci-fi and horror shows for you, including The X-Files, Declassified, and The Dilithium Chamber, which is a Star Trek, the original series, episode by episode dissection.
Yes.
And until next week, when Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
excited. I'm tentatively excited and terrified about next week because I also remember it pretty fondly, and I hope
It's going to be the Mantis one, isn't it?
I know it'll be a foreign film. You should be happy.
It is a
I
foreign
picked
film.
a foreign film in science fiction, so there you go. Yeah, but we'll see. Hopefully, all of you guys next week.
Yeah. We'll be back in science fiction land because we did a few horrors over Christmas, so we got to do a little sci-fi.
Yep.
And I will be seeing you then, David.
Yep. See you then.
Alrighty, bye.
Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.